I had a real challenge with the word unconventional. Okay. And the reason I had a challenge with that is that many people will interpret that word incorrectly to uh, gimmick, flashy, uh, you
Mm.
know, an instant pill of some sort. Okay. So my challenge with unconventional is that most of the stuff that's thought of as unconventional is it might get you one deal, but it's not going to build you a business, my opinion. Yeah.
That's the truth.
So, right. So when I read that question, what leapt to mind for me was actually the very first thing that I did. Now, granted, this was back in the days of not quite mimeograph, but pretty close to it. Um, and I did a neighborhood newsletter. So one of the things that you may or may not have heard from your mentors, your coaches, what have you, is the idea of specializing in something as opposed to serving everybody. Yeah. So what I did as a brand new agent is I selected a neighborhood. I decided to specialize in that neighborhood, and I did a monthly newsletter that was specific for the people who owned homes in that neighborhood. Yeah. Now, this is a really old fashioned idea, and it's so old fashioned that nobody else is doing it, y'all. So, this is, I would like you to think about it. Now, you're going to want to do an email newsletter. And that's what I did like for a long time in this new age. But I tell you, analog is coming back into style. So I would like to put into your little thought bucket the idea of doing an analog, like printed on paper, y'all, like analog newsletter for your specific niche. It could be a neighborhood, but it also could be like a special interest group. Like, are your kids on a soccer team? And you are there every single week sitting on those uncomfortable chairs with all the other soccer moms and dads. Maybe you could create a real estate newsletter for soccer moms and dads. I don't know what the deal is, y'all, but having something like that that is consistent, that's so important. Consistent. Don't do it once, not get a listing or a buyer and then decide it doesn't work. It's got to be consistent, right?
Abs- Yep.
Set yourself up as somebody who knows more about their real estate needs and interests than anybody else, right?
Hmm.
And make it quality, right? Don't like scribble something on a piece of notebook paper and then send it through your copy machine. Like, make it quality. So that's something that I would do if I were a new agent, is to really think about the niche and the expertise, and to broadcast or advertise or market that niche expertise with a newsletter.
Yeah. So one of the things that Cody and I did, what's it been, a year ago? We wrote what we call our best workflow secrets. And that was part of it is just making sure that you have some sort of niche. And it doesn't mean you have to have one, but the challenge I see in a lot of real estate agents is they try to get everybody, and that just alienates people in a way. It Because what's going to happen is you're going to find somebody that they don't remember you because you're so generic that there's going to be somebody else's sign in their yard besides yours. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. And it's just because they don't think about it.
Yeah.
And if you have some sort of niche, I mean, the you know soccer moms or whatever, that you're constantly hitting them with, I shouldn't say hitting, you're constantly providing them with good content. You're giving them something that they remember you, they remember the situation. Um, Whenever it's time for them to buy or sell a home, somebody comes up to them, they decide to talk to you about, they're thinking about buying a home or something. It's like, oh, I know this person. This is the person you need to see. And then that gets the referrals. Yes, no?
Absolutely. And I'm going to take you one step further. Whatever your niche is, think of it as something pretty small, right? So an ideal number is probably only 300 to 500 people. Yeah. So we're not talking an entire city, which I live in Los Angeles, so that'd be several million. That's already so it's easier for me to think about neighborhoods, right? But you may be thinking, okay, well, I'm going to specialize in my city, which only has, let's just say it's a very small city and it's only got 20,000 people. Yeah, that's too big. You cannot be known by 20,000 people. Well, that's not true. You can be, but it's hard to build a relationship business with 20,000 people, right? So 300 to 500 in your neighborhood, 300 to 500 in your kid's school, 300 to 500 in a particular vertical like divorce attorneys or probate guys or there's a lot of different niches here. It doesn't have to be geographic. 300 to 500 of the most expensive homes in your city, 300 to 500 of the apartment buildings that are filled with young professionals that are obviously trying to figure out how to buy their first house. There's so many ways you can slice this, but specialize.
Absolutely. In this area, I mean, we've got a lot of retirees, just getting, that they're needing to move to, out of this big house, whatever it is. And, how do you help them through that process? Because especially with prices of homes, interest rates, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of specialization that you can be doing.
There's a freaking designation for that. It's called SERS,
There
Senior Real Estate Specialist. I had it for a while. Anyway, so specialize.
Yeah. Um, but especially in this area, just moving out, a lot of older people and specializing in that. There's a number of now what we have recommended is, I mean, you can get into our software and say, give us a list of niches that might be interesting. We've got a whole list of them that you can go through, but definitely figure out in your area that smaller number and figure out how you can provide your services. And it really kind of comes down to the what what they call the reticular activator. It's an old word that I learned from Joe Stump a long time ago. Um, so if you've got a red Corvette, you just bought a brand new cherry red Corvette, and then you start driving around, all of a sudden you start seeing other red Corvettes. And if you're out there and you're niching on something, whatever that is, they're going to remember you because that reticular activator. It's the same thing, exact same thing. So, any other thoughts on that one?
I think we've given them something to think about.
Yeah.
One other thing you just want to give some thought to is are is there are there enough transactions in that small group? Yeah, you may want to specialize in the 500 most expensive homes in your city, but if expensive homes don't sell very often in your city, might be a very good place to specialize, right? You may need to have a larger sample, but it gets tougher. The larger it is, the tougher it is. Yeah. So think about those things as you select your niche and try to find one that you are personally really fired up by, right? So again, I'm going to go after the most expensive homes because everybody thinks, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a millionaire agent. I've met most of those people. So some of them are my friends. But you want to look at that and you're like, yeah, that's what I want because I want the big bucks. Are you personally fired up by the people or those homes? Do you have a personal connection with that particular niche? Right? Or like my very, very first niche was the neighborhood I lived in. I loved this neighborhood. I loved the architecture. I loved the people in it. I loved the location. I loved everything it was connected to. Like I was really fired up about that neighborhood. Happened to be a starter home neighborhood, and there was a lot of turnover. So it suited me perfectly. So think about those things as well.